This is the petrol-powered version of the MG3, and I've already done a full detailed review of the hybrid models. Hit the link in the description below if you want to see it. But these ones are $4,000 cheaper spec by spec. So, is it worth spending the extra $4,000 to get the hybrid, or should you just stick with the petrol version, which is more affordable and still pretty likable? Stay tuned, I'll tell you all about it in this review. If you've already subscribed, thanks very much, and ring the bell if you haven't. It does help a lot, and it keeps you informed about all of my reviews. Plenty coming. Let's get to it, shall we? Prices have gone up for the new generation MG3 range, and yes, the petrol model is a fair bit more expensive now than it used to be. It starts off at $23,990 plus on-road costs, so don't go thinking that that's the drive-away price. You'll need to go to the MG site and see what it's going to cost you to drive away in the car with no more to pay. But hey, I do think that $23,990 seems a little steep for the entry-level version. It's a big step up over the previous one, which is like $5,000 cheaper at least. So yeah, it might not make sense for your budget anymore because it was a much cheaper car before, but you get more features now than you did before, at least for the most part. The entry-level version, the Excite, still gets halogen headlights, which I think is a no-no. That just seems really silly to me. But it does get 16-inch alloy wheels, and it also gets push-button start, but not keyless entry, which is a bit peculiar. On the inside, you get cloth seat trim, you get a 7-inch driver info screen, and a 10.25-inch touchscreen media system with wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Plus, there's also digital radio, and a reversing camera is standard too, and I'll touch on more of the safety spec, which is a big improvement for this new generation model range later on. And then there's this one here, which is the high-grade Essence model. You can tell it from the outside because it's got those LED headlights, thank goodness. You also get a push button on the door, so it's keyless entry, which is really good. You get a sunroof as well, and a different interior trim too. Plus, it does have a few extra features, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it's a huge step up in terms of spec. But hey, it's only $2,000 more, and keep in mind that those prices are $4,000 less than what you'd pay if you were choosing the hybrid model, and whether that makes sense to you mathematically will depend on how efficient this car is, and we'll get to that later on in this review. But let's talk about some alternatives to the MG3, shall we? All right, let's talk about alternatives to the MG3 petrol models. On price, there are a few alternatives you might want to have a look at. Firstly, if you want something small that's efficient and fun, then the Kia Picanto could be a really good option for you. It's cheaper. It's actually the cheapest car on sale today as I film this, and it's still very, very good in my opinion. Now, it doesn't necessarily have all the features that you're getting in terms of the safety spec you get in the MG3, but I do think that the Picanto does have size on its side, and it's a very, very fun little car to drive. And there's a manual available if that's what you want, and a GT line sporty version too if that's what tickles your fancy. Another option that I reckon you should go and check out is the Suzuki Swift Hybrid. Yes, the new generation Swift model range is all hybrid. It has a manual or a CVT automatic available. There's 3 different grades. All of them are under $30,000 drive away. And to me, it stacks up as huge value for money. It misses out on some of the nice features that you might expect, but I do think that it makes up for it in the fact that it's fun and it's a bit more simple, and it doesn't have annoying safety technology that gets on your nerves. But if you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't want a little hatchback, I want an SUV. Well, you could go and have a look at the Hyundai Venue. It's got a, well, not overwhelmingly brilliant engine, but it does have a pretty nice size to it. It's got a good exterior footprint, plenty of space on the inside, and a big boot as well. You can fit adults in the back seat, and I think that it does stack up pretty well for the value for money perspective, even though it's not the most thrilling car to drive. But hey, neither's this, and there's lots of other choices out there that might be more appealing to you if you are looking for something that's super duper fun to drive, but you'll have to spend more money. That's just how it is. Which one would you pick? Or would you recommend something different? Let us know in the comments. I think this pastel yellow paint really makes the MG3 look how it should look. The grey version, the hybrid that I tested recently, I didn't really like the look of it, but I actually think that it looks pretty charming in this yellow finish, which is a no-cost colour option. So if you like yellow cars, and there aren't many left, this one could be a great choice for you. I also think that it looks great from the back. Just have a look at this taillight signature. I think it looks really tidy at the rear. And let's have a look in the boot in in fact. So no electric tailgate on any model in the MG3 lineup, if that really matters to you in a car of this size. But you can see for yourself that the boot space is pretty decent. You'll see the number of litres of cargo capacity on your screen now. And I think that is a pretty decent size for the size of this car. Bigger than some cars in the class up, in fact. You've got an LED light there. You've also got a shopping bag hook there, an emergency triangle there, and under the boot floor, because this is the petrol model, you get a space saver spare wheel as well. So that's nice to see. You don't get a spare wheel in the hybrid version, and I think that that could make all the difference if you live in the country. And another thing you want to keep in mind, you can't split fold the seat backs to fold them down. They just come down in one piece. Not ideal, especially if you've got a passenger or a child in a child seat and you need to load something large. Rightio, so this is the driver's seat perspective, and this is the high grade version of the MG3 petrol. So it gets the fake leather steering wheel, whereas the entry-level version just has a plastic wheel. Now this steering wheel, I made the comment in my hybrid model review as well, it's very large and it just takes up too much space for a car of this size in my opinion. And it's also got these fiddly controls, and they show up fingerprints so badly, this piano black finish on here. I wish it wasn't like that, but it is. Now these controls here are partly to control that screen and also to control what's going on over there. So you need to press that button there if you want to adjust things on this little driver info screen. So you can adjust things there using these buttons on the steering wheel, and you can also adjust things like the volume by that. So that was True Crime Garage, one of my favorite podcasts. Shout out to the guys. Look, the screen here, it's a 10.25 inch touchscreen media system. And yes, it does have wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but not wireless. So that's why I'm just connected up to the Bluetooth on my phone. I'll just zoom in a little bit for you here. And yes, you can see that there are a few different menus on this screen right now. You've got sat-nav. If you want to use built-in sat-nav instead, you can do that. That's totally cool. But there's also the smartphone mirroring tech, as I said, but you have to connect up via USB. Car settings is using this little control here, and you might want to go in and learn some of these, the MG Pilot ones, things like the overspeed alert for your little speed sign recognition that comes up on this screen here. And you've also got a few other features that you might want to turn off, like lane departure assist and driver monitoring as well. But hey, it's all up to you to decide what you feel comfortable living with or not. I'm just telling you my preferences, and my preferences are turn everything off because some of it's bloody annoying. Anyway, there's also a short key here so you can turn off the emergency lane keeping quickly if you want to, and that's good. I just wish there was one for some of the other controls. These multifunction controls are a little bit confusing, but this little star one you can configure so that it comes up with controls for the air conditioning and also the fan speed. So using the toggles on here, you can actually adjust things like the fan speed and also the temperature by using those little controls on the steering wheel. But just keep in mind that it won't work if you are using Apple CarPlay. So let me just go to Apple CarPlay here, and if I press the button on there now, it won't work when I continue to press it. So it flashes up, but then it goes away. Also, what is a little bit annoying is if you hit this fan control button, it doesn't work when you're on Apple CarPlay either. So you have to go hit that button instead, or actually go home, and then you'll be able to interact with the air conditioning controls in a more regular way. It's a bit confusing and a bit annoying and needs a bit of an iron out, I reckon. So I think that this screen is maybe not the easiest thing to learn, but it will get easier the longer that you live with it. And look, I like the fact that you've got a climate screen that is part of this home layout. But yes, if you are, say, trying to adjust something in the climate and you're in a different screen, say you're on sat-nav, you can just use these buttons down here. But there is no temperature control button and no fan speed adjuster. So you can hit this and that will take you back to that screen, and then you can touch the screen to adjust things. But it just doesn't have the simplicity that some other cars have when they have knobs and dials for those controls. I'm sure you'll get used to it, but it does annoy me just a little bit. Okay, down here, there should be a wireless phone charger, but there isn't. There's USB-C port and USB-A port, a 12 volt. You've got a couple of cup holders there, a couple little storage sections down here, including a little bottle holder thing there and a cover-up tray there where you might want to put your phone, but that's very scratchy and your phone slips around very easily in there. A traditional looking shifter for the petrol versions. The hybrid has a rotary dial thing. But look, I think that the elements of the cabin that impress me the most are the finishes. So you do have this sort of crosshatch finish across the dashboard, which runs across to this side as well. And I like that that's a bit of a hark back to the existing model, which had that sort of trim on the seats. Now the seats are a black cloth trim in this car, and they're okay. They're pretty comfortable and easy to adjust. But I also think that this finish is kind of nice too, although I had a lot of comments on the hybrid review about the light interior finish, which isn't available in some other markets. So good on us. Good on Australia for getting that. Now, there's also a sunroof in this grade, as you can see for yourself, and halogen lights on the inside. One thing I don't love is that there's no auto dimming rear view mirror. You have to do that on the mirror to adjust it so it goes dull at night time if you want it to. But hey, I guess there's another nice little benefit. You do get a USB port up there, so that means that you can plug in a dash cam and you don't have to have messy wires everywhere. So I guess it's not too bad, but not terrific, I would say. Let's check out the back seat, shall we? All right, this seat is set for my driving position, and I've got, yes, a decent amount of knee room here. Good foot room as well. And hey, headroom, maybe just a little bit tight for someone my height. I'm 182 centimeters or 6 foot. So it is maybe just a little bit tight, and watch your head getting in and out if you are a taller occupant. But I think that it's going to be doable for a lot of people out there. It is just a very dark cabin. Like, I've had to leave the doors open for this section because otherwise it's too dark for the camera to work. Okay, so you do have some features back here you will like: directional air vents and a USB port. There's a little tray down there too. You've got map pockets on the seat backs in this grade, and there's no fold down armrest or cup holders in the middle of the seats though. You do get ISOFIX points and 3 top tether points as well, and I have fit a child seat into the back of one of these MG3 new generation models before and had plenty of space to sit in front of it, in fact. So it is a fairly practical little car and pretty spacious in the back seat as well. For the size of it, it's impressive, I would say. Under the bonnet of the MG3 petrol models is a 1.5 litre, 4-cylinder, non-turbocharged petrol engine. Pretty modest outputs, but it is a new engine compared to the previous version and also employs a new transmission. It's a CVT auto this time around, as opposed to the old 4-speed in the existing car. Still front-wheel drive, and it has a 500 kilogram towing capacity, if that matters to you in a car of this size. But hey, let's go see what this engine and this powertrain is like in the driving section. I drove the existing version of the MG3 a bit, and I didn't really like it a bit. This car, though, is much more impressive in a few different ways. Not just because the 1.5 litre engine now does feel a bit more oomphy because of the CVT auto. The 4-speed auto in the previous one really robbed it of progress and speed, but I'm not saying this is a performance car, but hey, it does feel a little bit more perky when you do need to put your foot down. And the CVT, while you can hear it droning just a little bit, it's not really annoying like some other CVTs out there. And if you're wondering what a CVT is, you've never heard that before, it's just a different kind of transmission that doesn't really have gears. It just uses a sort of elastic band style thing to try and make as much use of the engine as it can in different situations. So it can rev hard at times, but that means that it's trying to do what it's supposed to do. All right, so we're on our bumpy street now, and I've got to say, it doesn't actually feel that bumpy in this car compared to some of the other cars I've driven down the bumpy street. I think that the ride comfort is pretty good in this new generation MG3. Look, it does have a slightly broader stance and a slightly longer wheelbase, which means that it feels a bit more planted in all situations, but even over bumpy sections, I think that the ride is quite forgiving. It's not necessarily perfect, but I think that it's better than it was in the previous cheap car. So look, here's the CVT in action. Yeah, it gets along okay, this little 1.5, and I actually think that it's going to do the job for a lot of people pretty easily. Sure, if you choose the hybrid, you're getting almost twice the amount of power, in theory at least, and look, it does have a nicer experience to it, that hybrid, but this, for $4 grand less, stacks up well. Now, in terms of the steering, I don't think that it's the most enthusiastic car to drive, and I don't think it needs to be, honestly. You might get more thrills out of some of the other cars in the segment. In fact, a Swift Sport would be a far more thrilling drive on the daily if that's what you're after, but yeah, it's also more money. So this, for what it's worth, is actually pretty decent in terms of the steering. It's, you know, predictable enough, but my issue, as I mentioned, is the size of the steering wheel. It just feels too big for this car, and it would feel a little bit more nimble and agile if it didn't have such a big steering wheel in it, I reckon. And now, the other thing with CVT autos is they can be a little bit finicky. Well, there's a big barky dog there. I won't park there. The other thing with CVT automatics is they can be a little bit finicky when it comes to reverse parallel parks and that sort of thing. So let's just do one now, just for science purposes. So just reversing. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit touchy when you're on the throttle, and then yeah, easy to park, very easy to park. The steering lightens up nicely in that situation. It's just when you're going from reverse to drive sometimes that CVTs can be a little bit fiddly. So let's go back to reverse. Yeah, a little bit of lag there, and then take off. Yeah, and a little bit of lag there. So it's not like unpleasant lag. It's almost better than a dual clutch automatic transmission in terms of the lag, because at least there's no rollback or anything like that. So yeah, I think that for what it's trying to be and what it's trying to offer a customer, it's doing a pretty good job of it. And yes, I do like the way this car handles itself in broader terms. So unlike the hybrid model, this one doesn't have regen braking, so it doesn't have that same sort of weird pedal feel that you get in a hybrid with regen brakes, but it still doesn't have the greatest brake pedal feel. It's a little bit sort of squishy feeling. It doesn't quite have the bitiness that you get in something like a Volkswagen Polo or a Skoda Fabia, for instance, although you are paying for a better car in broad terms, I would say, if you are buying one of those vehicles, and they cost more money as a result of that. But look, for the price, I think that this new generation MG3 drives better than the previous one. And I'm not saying that it's the best driving car in this class, but it is a big improvement in terms of the driving experience compared to the last one. So is it good on fuel? Let's talk about that now. Okay, so in theory, if you're after the most efficient version of the MG3, you buy the hybrid, right? Well, look, I'm going to show you the official combined cycle figure for the hybrid model, and also I'll show you what I achieved over my week with the hybrid model, and now I'll show you the official combined cycle figure for this petrol version, and I'm going to show you what I've achieved over my drive in this car. It's not as efficient as the hybrid, but hey, that extra $4,000 to buy into the hybrid might not necessarily result in huge fuel use savings, although it might actually mean better resale value at the end. Who knows? Get your crystal ball out and tell me what you think. The previous generation MG3 didn't have any advanced safety technology, but this one does. It's got plenty, in fact. While it doesn't have an ANCAP safety rating yet, I would imagine it will have one soon, and it should achieve the maximum score because it's got all the tech you'd expect to do so. Things like autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. There's adaptive cruise control. There's lane keeping assistance with emergency lane keeping, which is a bit too pushy in my opinion. There's also a blind spot monitoring system, rear cross traffic alert, a reversing camera, and rear parking sensors are standard as well. And if you spend up to the high grade Essence model, you also get a surround view camera system, which is nice. So all of those things stack up to make this a pretty safe option, at least in terms of the specs. But hey, some of those systems are maybe a little bit irritating to live with on a daily basis. You tell me though. In Australia, MG offers a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is good for this class, and it also throws in 7 years of roadside assistance as well, which which is very, very good too. Now, there's a cap price servicing plan for the first 5 years or 50,000 kilometers for this vehicle. Yes, that means your service intervals are every 12 months or 10,000 Ks, which is a bit more needy than some of the other vehicles out there. But the service pricing is okay, I would say. Not necessarily super duper cheap, but you'll see the average over that first 5 years on your screen now. Not too bad, but not necessarily cheap. Just like this car, not as cheap as it was. I think that this new MG3 petrol might actually make a lot more sense for a lot more people than the hybrid version, because for a city driver or someone who commutes into the town, or, you know, if you just do country driving all the time, it could be perfectly fine for your needs. But tell me what you think about it in the comments section below. Do you think you'd spend the extra $4,000 to get into the hybrid, or would you buy something completely different? I'd love to hear from you, and let me know if there's any other car reviews you'd like to see. Hit me up in the comments and I'll see what I can do for you. If you've already subscribed, thanks very much. It does help a lot. And please ring the bell to keep up to date with all of my reviews. Thanks heaps for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.